This happened towards the end of the pandemic, when everything was slowly returning to normal. A massive typhoon had swept through the region, knocking out power for most of the area. Only a handful of places, like resorts and hotels with generators, still had electricity and running water. My family and I, exhausted and uncomfortable from several sleepless nights in the heat, decided to stay at one of these resorts. We hadn't taken a vacation in years, so we thought, why not make the most of it? The resort was a 5-hour drive from the city, a typical tropical getaway with wooden villas and bungalows scattered across a lush green property. About 50% of the resort wasn't being used, so it felt quiet and open. The property was full of trees and grass, and in the evenings, you'd only see a few lights from the other villas. The best part? The beach was just a few steps away. We had a great time. Every evening after dinner, we'd sit outside and chat for hours. It was so cozy. The staff and even the owner would occasionally stop by to have a little chat with us, making the experience feel even more homey. After about a week, my dad started complaining about the bed, saying it was too soft for him. He said he wanted to go back home. My dad, a retired military officer who served for 25 years, had back problems from all the wear and tear of his service. We reminded him that going home wasn't the best idea since the power in the city still hadn't come back. That's when I started noticing something unusual about him. He'd go quiet and stare into space. It was unlike him. My dad was the type who always talked and cracked jokes. He loved to make people laugh, especially us. It was strange, but when I asked him if something was wrong, he'd just brush it off and say, "Nothing." Over the next few days, this behavior got worse. He spoke less, and that lively energy he usually had wasn't there anymore. I stopped asking questions after a while because I didn't want to annoy him. I figured he just needed time to shake it off. One evening, we were sitting outside, just hanging out like usual. The night was quiet, and the air was chilly. Most of the resort's guests had already gone home, so it felt even emptier than before. The lights from other villas were fewer now, leaving the place darker. Around midnight, we were getting ready to head inside when my dad looked in a completely different direction and suddenly said, "I smell smoke." Confused, I sniffed the air but didn't smell anything. My mom and sister didn't either. Dad insisted there was a fire. He kept looking toward a dark, empty lot with tall bushes in the distance, saying, "There's fire over there." I tried to reassure him there was nothing there, but after a few seconds, he started walking toward it. I jokingly said to my mom, "He's losing it," trying to lighten the mood, but as he kept walking, my worry grew. He moved faster than I'd ever seen him walk in years, especially considering his back problems. I called out to him, but he didn't stop. Worried, I ran to catch up with him. When I finally reached him, I noticed his eerie, blank stare. It gave me chills. He wasn't out of breath like he usually would be after moving that quickly. He just kept saying, "I can smell the smoke. There's fire." He pointed to the same dark lot. I turned to look where he was pointing, and although I couldn't see anything, I suddenly felt a deep, unsettling fear. It was as if someone, or something, was watching us from the darkness, waiting. Dad insisted on moving closer, but I pushed him back toward the villa, practically dragging him. He didn't resist much, but kept looking back at the bushes. Once we got inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Nobody said a word. My dad lay down on the bed and fell asleep quickly without saying anything. The rest of us just sat there, shocked by what had just happened. We didn't talk much that night and decided we'd go home the next day. A few weeks passed, and we asked my father about what happened. He said he could barely remember anything. All he could recall was the smell of smoke, and there was a fire.